Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be going over my reading plans for the month of March, and I think most people will look at this and say that is a very optimistic look on how much I'm going to be able to read this month, but to me that is just some of the fun. So let's go ahead and start off with the first book, and this is actually a book that I planned on finishing by February. I gave myself 2 months to finish this book, and I'm actually not even that close. I have about 450 pages left, so March is going to be the month I finish this because there is another physical book I want to read, and I only like to read one book at a time physically. But The Fugitive Prince by Janie Wertz is the fourth book in the Wars of Light and Shadow series, and it is a book that, like I said, I have been trying to get through for the past 2 months, and I just haven't put enough effort into it. Most of that is because I normally read physically right before bed, and so I'll get into bed, read for 5 minutes, and fall asleep, and that is obviously not very conducive to finishing a epic fantasy book. So I'm going to kind of switch that up and really try to focus on reading this. And just in case you were wondering what The Fugitive Prince is about, and this is actually more for the series as a whole, The Fugitive Prince is about the schism began with two half-brothers empowered to subdue a mistwraith. In revenge, it cursed them to a life of perpetual conflict, each believing absolutely in his cause and loathes the other for opposing it. So that is just kind of not really giving you anything about that book, but that is kind of the pitch for the series as a whole. And I do implore you to at least give some of Janie Wertz's works a try, because I think she's a brilliant writer, and this is already kind of climbing its way onto my top 10 series of all time. I should make that list at some point. But moving on to the next book, and this is one that I started here at the very tail end of February and will be bleeding into March, and that is House of Chains, book 4 also of Malazan, Book of the Fallen by Stephen Erickson. And this book is about, in northern Genebacus, a raiding party of savage tribal warriors descends from the mountains into the southern flat. Their intention is to wreak havoc amongst the despised lowlanders, but for the one named Karsa Orlong, it marks the beginning of what will prove to be an extraordinary destiny. So I have been introduced to Karsa at this point. What an interesting character. People keep telling me how awesome this character is, so I'm very much looking forward to getting more into this series, and well, this book in particular, and seeing why people just keep saying witness. And so I've gotten a little bit of that where it seems like whenever somebody from this tribe does something, they need somebody to also witness them doing it. But I'm very excited to get into this. And I will say, the little bit that I have read, I have blown through. When I sat down to actually listen to this book, I have blown through it. And so I only have about, well, not just a little amount. I have 33 hours left in this audiobook, which I know some people say you shouldn't listen to Malazan, but it's what I'm doing. But 33 hours, and I listen to about 1.8 times speed, so it's probably closer to what is the math on that, like 17 hours, something like that. So that shouldn't take me too long, and hopefully I can kind of get through it rather quickly. But Malazan has been an interesting journey for me, and I'm excited to get to more. Next up is actually an arc of a book, and this book has been getting quite a bit of praise here on the BookTube sphere, and that is because Discovery by J.A.J. Mitten is on my TBR for the month of March, and this book has been getting a lot of hype. I have heard honestly nothing but just amazing things about Discovery overall. If you don't know, J.A.J. Mitten is the combination of the family over at Talking Story, which is John, Jacob, and Amy, and Mr. Pooh. We can't forget Mr. Pooh, the august Mr. Pooh. So you've probably seen some reviews and stuff for that overall. They were nice enough to send me an arc of it, and so I do plan on, once I finish The Fugitive Prince, this is the other physical book I plan on reading this month, and it is about 450 pages, and so like I said, optimistic reading month, but I will at least start it and hopefully finish it. I've heard it reads really fast, so I'm very excited to get to that. But in case you aren't familiar with Discovery, let me tell you a little bit what it's about. In 1992, at the dawn of the age of technology, disgraced ex-game show host Manny D. Martin schemes for a comeback with a deep-sea television special in the South Pacific. He quickly finds himself over his head, attracting the attention of a cosmic being who will lead him to a television broadcast event much bigger than the entire planet bargained for. Evidence of a slumbering alien in a ruined city at the bottom of the ocean. One look at the monster on TV, and humans collectively freak out. And that's just like a little bit of the synopsis. I didn't want to read the whole thing out. You can definitely, I implore you to go look up this book a little bit for yourself. But like I said, I have heard nothing but good things about it. And I've also heard that it is unlike anything anybody else has really read, that it fits in a lot of different categories, but it's really kind of doing its own thing, and it's a traditional or non-traditional way. And I've also heard that the dialogue is very similar to like a Tarantino movie, and I absolutely love Tarantino movies. So I'm very excited to get around to this here in March, and hopefully just have an awesome time and get to talk about how awesome it is with everybody else. Next up is a book that Joanna over at Joanna Reads talked about. I think it was in her wrap-up, and it sounded super interesting to me, and that is I Who Have Never Known Men. Did I get the title right? I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. I wasn't sure I was going to get that. So this is an interesting book. It's a kind of dystopian book The synopsis of the book is: deep underground, 39 women live imprisoned in a cage, watched over by guards. The women have no memory of how they got here, no notion of time, and only vague recollection of their lives before. As the burn of electric light merges day into night and numberless years pass, a young girl, the 40th prisoner, sits alone and outcast in the corner. Soon she will show herself to be the key to the others' escape and survival in the strange world that awaits them above. So part of the reason I'm reading this is a very short audiobook. It's only about 6 hours, but Joanna just really sold it to me. And so I have been recommended many of the books from her, and I don't think she's really missed on any of them yet that she has talked about and that I have picked up. So I'm pretty much gonna, just going off what she said about it. So we'll see if I end up liking it. I do think it'll be an interesting mix, because I'm assuming it's a book that is going to be primarily just made up of women from the sounds of it. It does also sound like the guards maybe aren't, but I don't know. I just think that might be like an interesting dynamic to it, because I feel like a lot of the dystopian stuff I've read, it's either a mixed cast or a predominantly male cast. And so I kind of want to see what happens here and how the story is different than something else. And we're actually going to keep the booktuber recommendation / books going, because this next book was very highly praised by Jimmy over at the Fantasy Network, and that is James by Percival Everett. And this is basically Huck Finn from the viewpoint of Jim. And Jimmy just really talked about how eye-opening this book was, how great the writing was, and then has gone on to read some other Percival Everett stuff and just talked about how great he seems to be as an author in whole. So I'm just kind of looking forward to dipping my toes. I think this was Barnes & Noble's Books of the Year last year, is kind of how it got on his radar. And sometimes a super popular book is super popular for a reason. So I am very much looking forward to that. And that one is an 8-hour audiobook. So once again, with listening at 1.8 times speed, it won't take me as long with some of the very, very long things that I have planned for this month. I'm going to need some shorter reads to break some stuff up. And honestly, those two previous books with I Have Never Known Men and James are ones that maybe I'll even break up House of Chains with if I need like a little break from it. So we'll see what goes there. And then I don't plan on finishing this book in the month of March, but I would like to at least start it. I would like to finish everything I just talked about, which seems very optimistic. But then if that does happen, I would like to go ahead and finish the Five War Angels trilogy with The Lonesome Crown by Brian Lee Durfee. If you don't know, this is I would say grimdark epic fantasy kind of story. It really is dealing a lot with prophecy, and prophecies are coming of age. And that one thing I've really appreciated about the series is there are these prophecies, and throughout it you think it's going to be one person, but then you also have the possibility of it being somebody else. So it's kind of playing with the idea of like, who is actually the chosen one? Are the people we think the chosen one? Are they, it's a great story, and I'm very much looking forward to starting it in this month, because it is a 43-hour long audiobook. So I don't think there's any way that I also finish that in the month of March. But if I can at least put a little bit of a dent into it and, have some of it read, I'll be very ecstatic. And then the only other things that I plan on reading is a little bit of manga. So I would like to continue reading Frenin Beyond Journey's End. It has been fantastic. And I also want to continue reading Dragon Ball Super. It's been okay. I won't say it's been great, but I have some issues with it that I've talked about. But I want to kind of use those as a way to break up some of the longer reads that I have, because obviously there is a lot of long stuff going on in here. And then the only comic I want to read this month is All-Star Superman. Britton over at Some OK Dude recommended this to me after I read, I can't remember the other Superman comic, Superman 4 Seasons, I think is what it was, and I really, really enjoyed that. And so he recommended that I pick this one up, and so I will probably make my way through this as the month goes on, because you can kind of read comics a little bit differently than a full blown novel. I can kind of pace myself through this, and hopefully I'll enjoy it just as much, because Superman is my favorite superhero. And admittedly, I have read some Superman comics, but probably not as many as I should. I really end up liking Superman because of some of the ideas and things that he represents overall, not necessarily because I think he has some like amazing stories, though he obviously does. Like I said, For All Seasons was like one of my favorite things that I read this year. So I'm looking forward to hopefully getting more of that level of stuff. But that is my very ambitious reading plans for the month of March. We'll see how those things work. If I can finish The Fugitive Prince this month, I'm going to count this month a win no matter what else I finish, because I have been taking way too long to read that book. But please let me know what you are planning to read down below in the comments. Let me know if you're going to read any of this stuff, and we can definitely chat about it. I have some announcements coming here soon-ish that maybe we'll make that a little bit easier to do. But that's all for me. And as always, remember, read what you want when you want.